What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Range Plays back again with another CS2 video. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the fact that Valve has finally spoke out and done an interview. They did this interview with PC Gamer on the future of Counter-Strike 2. So, let's go ahead and break this down. So, PC Gamer's first question to Valve was, over CSGO's lifespan, it changed enormously. And Valve clearly learned a ton that went into Counter-Strike 2. It proved to be a much more dynamic game over its lifespan than previous iterations of Counter-Strike, without losing focus on the core competitive mode. Did this occur organically, or was it always conceived as a 10-year project? The dev team responded with, well, CSGO certainly wasn't released with specific timeline in mind. We couldn't have predicted how massive the audience would become over 10 years. But the plan from start was a long-term commitment to the game's development, and the decision to move to CS2 came out of that same broader commitment to Counter-Strike. CSGO was an incredible game, but its development was fundamentally limited by aging technology, meaning the Source engine versus the Source 2 engine. As the rest of Valve transitioned into developing on the Source 2 engine, it became apparent that the best way to continue supporting Counter-Strike was to do the hard work of rewriting the game on the new engine. It's easy to think about a new engine in terms of graphics, gameplay, and all the tangible differences between CSGO and CS2. But, to be honest, the biggest upgrade is the fact that we will be able to continue supporting Counter-Strike for many years to come. Then PC Gamer said that number 2 is a big statement of intent, establishing CS2 as the first direct sequel in Counter-Strike's 23-year history. Why make this distinction? Valve responded with, CS2 is truly the largest technical leap forward in Counter-Strike history, which I would kind of say from CS Source to CSGO, but maybe not. The game is built on an entirely new engine, which I guess that's true, with fundamental changes to nearly every system. Every map was reauthored in the new engine. Every weapon model, every animation, every sound, even the way players find matches has gotten an update. About half of our playtime is now in Premiere mode. So much has changed from CSGO that we couldn't consider it to be the same game. This isn't a spin-off, this is the next iteration of mainline Counter-Strike. Then, PC Gamer asked, since CS2 released, we've seen players sharing clips of encounters where hits aren't registered as expected. What do you make of clips like this from players? Are CS2 subtick servers working as intended? Which is a great question from them to ask, and of course, Valve's response is, well, to be clear, those examples aren't issues with subtick servers. They show a different bug, an animation hitbox mismatch when looking down. But the important thing is that those clips helped us isolate the specific bug and ship the fix to customers quickly. Bugs like that are unfortunate, but detailed community feedback is always incredibly helpful. As to your question about subtick servers, the goal of subtick is to give everyone a consistent, tick-independent experience that's better than CSGO's 64 or 128 tick experience. For the most part, the system works as intended, but as we rolled out the feature to more and more people, we got feedback like those clips about systems that weren't reaching their goals. The CS community is understandably focused on both differences and bugs that affect their experience. We're working hard to address them. Next, they asked about launch and the first year. So, what are the plans for CS2's first year? One of the most exciting elements of the new release is seeing, finally, how players approach the game. They fundamentally change our views on what to prioritize and how the future might look. For example, Premier Matchmaking is now the most popular mode in Counter-Strike, which we didn't predict. So we're keeping our first year plans flexible as we balance our ability to respond to urgent player needs with the long list of other features we'd love to ship. Next, they were asked, there have been significant backlash to NFTs in the gaming community, and of course games that feature NFTs and cryptocurrency aren't allowed in Steam. One of the promises of NFTs is the notion of being able to take valuable in-game items from one game to the next. Counter-Strike 2 is perhaps the first game to actually achieve this. What do you make of CS2 validating this concept of players retaining inventories across different games? Valve responded, from the start of development, we knew that CS2 would ultimately replace CSGO, and we wanted to ensure that players could keep as many of their CSGO skills and items as possible. So early in the process, we started work to support all of the CSGO weapons, stickers, agents, and music in CS2. There were non-trivial challenges in getting older items to fit into the new look and feel of the new game. But the feature was something we knew would be very important to players. For us, bringing the items forward is just the customer-centered way to bridge between games and its successor. Sometimes people talk about NFTs in the context of Counter-Strike items, but to be honest, we don't know enough about NFTs to weigh in on that conversation. We're just trying to make the best decisions we can about the things our players care about. Which basically means, Valve was like, if we don't do this, we lose a lot of people and a lot of money. The next question they were asked was, has the launch been a success? Is there anything in hindsight you'd have done differently? Valve responded with, the launch has been an overwhelming success and player numbers are still humbling. CS2 site shows the game has 31.5 million monthly players. Believe it or not, one of the biggest successes was the limited test. Getting the game into players' hands quickly and early gave us hugely valuable feedback that drove many of our decisions leading up to release. So we were very happy with the process that led us from early development to limited test to release. As to what we've done differently, we could have handled our communication over the system requirements for CS2 better. We should have let affected players know earlier in the process. We know there's a conversation about whether the limited test should have been longer. For sure, there are some features that would have been included in CS2 at launch if we had a longer beta, but over time, it's not clear what the priorities should be when you have an ever-shrinking and self-selecting subset of the community participating. And without everyone playing the same game, we couldn't make much progress on the most critical systems like networking, performance, and core gameplay. Since we've launched, we've been getting feedback about new bugs, behaviors, and issues from players at every level, from casual players on older hardware to the pros. Launching the game has massively accelerated the pace of improving CS2, so we think that launching when we did was the right time. Even if the landing was, and still is, bumpy, ultimately, this is the fastest way to get CS2 to where we all want it to be 1 or 5 or 10 years from now. I hope to God it's not 10 years from now. Guns, modes, and maps. They were asked, you've very slightly reduced the spray of every rifle in the game. Why? Valve responded with, in CSGO, players were split between 64 and 128 tick servers. Tick rate affected CSGO in several ways, including how grenades were simulated and the spray patterns for weapons. And players had difficulty switching between the two environments. A goal of CS2 was to unify those two groups, and sub-tick servers are an important step towards that goal. The sub-tick servers separate gameplay from tick boundaries, which lets us fine-tune gameplay towards whatever specific standard we want. So to get back to your question, the spray patterns look slightly reduced compared to 64 tick CSGO because as a general rule, we've tried to match the 128 tick behavior when possible. And 128 tick rate CSGO sprays are roughly the size you currently see in CS2. So that kind of addresses a little bit of the spray issue, but I feel like it's a little different than how they're explaining it now. But of course, this is Valve's PR team that's doing this, so... The next question was, do you intend to introduce new weapons over CS2's lifespan? Valve responded with, yes, it is not the top priority at the moment. We would absolutely plan to introduce some new weapons for CS2. We're always looking for ways to give players more interesting decisions to make in the game, so we'll typically look at cases where either players don't have the right tools to approach a situation, or only have 1 or 2 tools available. Where is the gameplay getting stale? What kind of weapon might shake up the status quo? Over the 10 years of CSGO, we learned some occasionally painful lessons about how to gracefully introduce a new weapon into the game. DR8. We think that we have a handle on how to approach this in the future. And with the more customizable loadouts in CS2, shipping weapons should be even more straightforward. The next question asked to them was, CS2's release thus far has focused on the competitive side of the game. A lot of stuff people loved about the previous games hasn't yet appeared, whether that is modes like Arms Race or particular community maps and things like surfing. What's the plan here? Those modes haven't been forgotten. We have plans to reintroduce popular game modes and explore others. That being said, all game modes, regardless of their rules, fundamentally depend on solid core gameplay. So in the short term, we have been keeping our development focused on the spaces where players spend the overwhelming amount of their collective time. It's a trade-off, and understandably frustrating for players who primarily enjoyed other game modes, but we believe that this is the best approach for the long-term success of CS2. Next question was, why has Dust 2 survived this long? I know it's almost a joke now, and there are easy answers about asymmetry, etc., but what has made this the iconic FPS map? To which Valve responded with, Dust 2 nailed the formula of the competitive CS map. It has good distances between bomb sites and team spawns. There's enough routes to allow changing tactics, but not so many that you're ever committed. It's minimalist and noob friendly. It's the perfect canvas for showing off your skills. Everything before it didn't work quite right competitively, and everything that came after it was influenced by it. The next question was, the contemporary mainstream FPS defaults towards aiming down sights shooting, whereas CS guns with only guns with sights do that. Has the CS dev team ever considered a radical shakeup of the shooting basics, or do they think these classic principles will stand for another 10 years? To which Valve responded, we'd probably think about it on the opposite direction. What problem does aiming down sights solve? And do we have that problem? On consoles, ADS is a great solution to the difficulty of aiming with a controller. You can hide and auto-aim snap to the enemy in transition, reduce controller sensitivity to make aiming easier, etc. But those aren't gameplay input problems that PC players have. And more importantly, it's not something our players are expressing any concerns about. So we don't have any plans to change the basics of CS2. The next question was, what are 3 important things every Counter-Strike map should have? Valve responded, players, players, and players. Every great Counter-Strike map started out as not great Counter-Strike map, and the difference has always been player feedback. No matter how much internal testing we do with our maps, we can never match the feedback we get from millions of players throwing millions of smokes or jumping off every conceivable surface. That feedback instantly makes the maps much better. So they basically say us bitching at them. And beyond our team, those successful community map makers excel at getting their early ideas into players' hands quickly and fixing stuff based off their feedback. We'll try to get maps in front of players in front of as many players as possible, and we can't wait to see what they create for CS2. Next question asked was, how is the community market for items reacted to the release of CS2? Did you notice any particular data or changes in the item market that surprised you? Valve responded with, we generally only look at market prices when we're thinking about shipping new stuff and want to understand player preferences. Players' interest in items fluctuates over time for many reasons, so outside of that context, we try not to read too much into temporal changes, and as we were leading up to CS2, we were focused on other areas of the game, so there may have been lots of interesting things going on in the market, we weren't paying any attention. And here's the part that everyone's going to care about. The future of CS2. What is one thing in CS2 that won't make any headlines but is going to be the most important for the long-term health of the game? Better tools were the foundation of Source 2. They're how we all updated and improved all of the content that you're seeing in CS2. And these tools are now available to every artist in the Counter-Strike community. The tools don't get a lot of headlines, but they're the key to the community content that will shape CS2 in the years to come. Looking over CSGO's lifespan and development, with hindsight, what is its greatest success and its greatest misstep? Valve responded with, we ran into lots of experiments in CSGO. By far the most successful experiment was our first introduction of matchmaking. The introduction of skill-based matchmaking to CSGO, official 5v5 matches with visible skill groups, was a turning point for the game and the broader CS community. Not only was it instantly the most popular Counter-Strike game mode, but it also drove a massive increase in player retention. From that point forward, CSGO player base grew at an incredible rate and we never looked back. Missteps. How many pages do we get? We've had plenty of missteps over the years. Usually they came from us failing to follow our own process or of listening to the community and understanding their needs. But sometimes they came from us having a process that wasn't particularly good in the first place. For example, when we launched the R8 pistol, it had some significant bugs. Those bugs were fixed the next day, and the weapon's damage was lower the day after that. But because the gun was introduced in every game mode, that period affected everyone was very disruptive. Among many things that we learned from the R8 was to be more careful in shipping new or major changes to weapons to let players put them through their paces before making them available everywhere. Next, Valve was asked, how different do you expect CS2 to look in 10 years? To which they responded, we should all expect CS2 to look very different in 10 years. Just look at how much CSGO changed. But just as CSGO's final form was the culmination of a decade of experiments, CS2's future isn't set in stone. We don't have a specific version that we're trying to realize, but rather a process we want to continue to execute for many years. We'll continue to explore all of the opportunities that come with the game and its amazing community, to experiment with new ideas, and to do the hard work necessary to make CS2 the place every FPS fan wants to be. And that was the end of that interview. So, some quick takeaways, because I know this video is already going to be long and that was a lot of reading for me to do. Basically, Valve did what Valve had to do. They went in there, their PR team did really good at making it seem like, hey, yeah, the game has a lot of issues, but we're fixing them, which is true. But I think that the biggest takeaway you guys can get from this is the fact that they do have a ton of plans for this game, and they are listening to the community feedback. Those are the two big points that I'm going to be taking away from this is, hey, community feedback is huge on them right now. And then also, they've got a ton of stuff in the pipeline, and they're just trying to make the game as good as they can. So let's all kind of take a sigh of relief here. CS2 is not the death of Counter-Strike. It's going to continue to get better, and Valve is currently working on it every day, and they're listening to us. So that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.